What's up, everyone? My name is Drew. I'm the creative director at DM Digital. Today, I'm going to walk us through how to set up a cost-effective Facebook ad campaign. Now, this is going to allow you to set up a Facebook ads campaign that doesn't get outbid by larger budgets and does not run up your costs. This is going to help you reduce your costs and maximize your results with respect to whatever your budget might be. So, before we get started, real quick, if you have a local business, a small business, and are struggling to create effective Facebook ad campaigns, feel free to reach out to us and ask questions at our website at dmdigital.org. You can go ahead and schedule a free consultation there, and we'll get you set up with some strategic advice. So let's go ahead and dive in. When you first get to your ads manager, your Facebook ads manager, this account is not fully set up, but this is what it'll generally look like if you haven't run any campaigns. Now, when you get started, obviously you're going to create a campaign and you're going to see several different objectives here to choose from. You have brand awareness, reach, traffic, lead generation, conversions. Now, depending on your industry and your audience and your location and your budget, some of these are going to be more effective than others. The most expensive one here is conversions, and this is also usually the most effective one, but it generally takes around a budget size of, I would say, $50 a day on average, lower end, just to get a good solid result. If you are spending more like $20 a day, then you're going to want to look at traffic, your traffic campaign to drive people to websites and a Facebook event or something like that. And then you can also retarget those audiences with a reach campaign that is usually effective for around $5 a day. So traffic, engagement, and video views are great ways to build up those re-engagement audiences, and we can get into that more in depth at another time. But for today's sake, we're going to go ahead and choose a conversion campaign. So we're going to go ahead and name this just an example campaign. So once you put in your conversion name and your campaign name and set up your ad sets, it's going to bring you to this first page. You're going to see a few different sections here. You don't really need to worry about these unless if you fall into one of these categories. Your campaign details, you can't really change this. It's always auction bidding. Your campaign objective, we already selected that. You also have the capability to limit your ad spend. Don't really need to use that either though. So you're going to go ahead and just go straight down to A/B test. Don't really use this unless if you have a need for testing out different creatives or different variables and elements within your campaign. I usually always turn on campaign budget optimization, just because if you have multiple ad sets, it will optimize your budget to distribute across the better performing of the two, or however many you have. Also for this example, we're just going to keep it to one ad set. So using multiple ad sets is a good way to manually A/B test, but just for simplicity's sake, we're going to stick to just this basic example. Now, I usually choose a lifetime budget, and for this campaign, we're going to go ahead and go with $50 a day, which would be $1,500 for our lifetime. Now, this right here is what you're really going to want to focus on. This is the very important part This is where companies that have small budgets and run conversion campaigns, this is where they can avoid driving their costs insanely high and keep their costs relatively tolerable. It also prevents you from being outbid by larger budgets, like I mentioned earlier. So, without getting into all of these in depth, lowest cost, basically, this one is the one that will drive your costs up. Essentially, the lowest cost option is automated and will aim to basically earn you a conversion despite how much it has to bid on an auction or how much it has to spend to get a completed event. That's also why these next two options prevent costs from rising but can affect how quickly your budget spends or how long your campaign stays in the learning phase. Bid cap will allow you to manually control how much you bid in each auction or per impression, essentially. The one that we're going to use if you are very focused on a small budget and optimizing that small budget, you're going to want to use a cost cap. Another thing here, not as relevant, but if you want to choose to run your ads on a different schedule rather than 24/7, you can do that here as well. And I'm going to go ahead and turn that on just in case if we decide to do that later. So like I mentioned, this ad manager is not set up perfectly, so we're just going to use a pixel that's not actually a real pixel. We're going to use purchase pixel. So this, for example's sake, let's say you run an e-commerce store and you have your pixel on your website and you have several different events set up, and the event that you want to track the most is purchases on your website. So your event is going to be your campaign is going to be optimized for purchase events in this ad set. And now you can also add different ad sets that are optimized for different things, but once again, for simplicity's sake, we're going to use one ad set, and your conversion event is going to be purchases. I usually skip over dynamic creative. You can always add an offer, but I would leave that blank for now. I usually make my campaigns last 4 weeks. It depends really on how often you want to readjust your campaign. And now here's the ad scheduling. You're going to choose the user's time zone, obviously. Let's say that you know that your e-commerce store is stay-at-home moms who are younger and have money and don't have a job, and they are up early, but they don't really get on social media until like early afternoon. And you know that if you run an ad campaign, they're not even going to see it until early afternoon. That's where you can go in here and you can say, I don't want to run my campaign anytime outside of these hours, because I know they're on social media from noon till 7 p.m. And then on Saturday, I know that they're on social media outside of those hours, and same with Sunday. So I'm going to select those as well. One thing that you don't want to do here is leave gaps in between this. It's not really like a proven fact, but it could affect performance in the long run. So usually you don't even want to mess with this unless if you know for a fact that your target customer is not online between like these hours or on these specific days even. We're going to skip audience for now. As for placements, you can do automatic or you can choose manual. I usually choose manual, but if you're an e-commerce store, then you're going to want to make sure that you are at least on Instagram. Instagram is the best performing platform for e-commerce industry. So I usually don't do these. I usually avoid being in articles. Search is okay. As for videos, you only want to be presented on videos if you are using a video. Usually same with stories, unless if your image is formatted like this. I also usually take it off of the right column just because this is a desktop only type of thing, and usually users are not paying any attention to that, so you're getting charged for impressions that you're not really getting. Now this is the reason right here. This is the most important part of your campaign if you are running a small budget besides the creative itself. If you are running a conversion campaign and you want to sell your merchandise on your campaign, you want to have your spend optimized for whatever you can afford. So if you are selling t-shirts that are like $30 a t-shirt, but you don't want to spend any more than the industry average for your t-shirts, your cost per acquisition of customer, your cost per purchase, because that's what your pixel is optimized for right now. You're tracking purchases. So if your pixel set up correctly, your campaign is going to run based off of how much it costs to get your purchase event to be completed. Let's say you're willing to spend $15 to get someone to buy a shirt. That's where you put this in. That's basically it. There's a lot more to it than that as far as your own personal preferences and how much you're willing to spend, how much profit you want to make, how much you're able to spend in order to acquire a new customer. But once again, that's all relevant based on your market and your industry. I also usually bring this down to one day just because, if someone purchases on my website 5 days later after they see my ad, I don't want that to be counted towards my ad. So the audience targeting is the only thing we have left. So just for convenience's sake, let's say we go back to our original example of targeting stay-at-home moms who are younger, have a little bit more wealth, and are unemployed. So there are a couple different ways you can make an audience. You can use the saved audience, which is what we're about to make right now, or you can use a custom audience or a lookalike audience. Custom audiences can be made from website events, video views, leads, interactions with your Instagram account or Facebook page, or events that you've hosted. You can upload customer lists, and you can also upload offline activity sheets. But we're not going to use that. Let's say you're brand new at Facebook ads and you don't have any of these information. You can also create lookalike audiences based on customer sheets or pixels, but you generally need about 1,000 members of at least 1,000 people in that audience in order to make a reliable lookalike audience. So let's say that you want to target anyone who lives in the US. You have different options here. We're going to say living in the US, but you can also do people who have traveled in the US or people who have recently been in the US. This basically depends on your location. If you want people to come into your physical location, if you want to, and again, depending on your industry and your marketing objective, but for convenience sake, people living in the US. We said younger stay-at-home moms. So we're going to go with stay-at-home moms who are a millennial. I usually turn detailed targeting off just so we don't leave our target audience. Generally, depending on your industry and your product or service, this isn't going to matter. Like if you are selling t-shirts and your target audience is women who are 24 to 38 and stay at home and have kids, and you just have a product like a t-shirt, unless if you're very picky about it, it's not going to matter if other people who are likely to buy it as a result of your ad. But if you are like in the service industry and you target small business owners, then that's when you may want to turn something like this off. But for now, we're going to leave it on. So then we're going to go into detailed targeting. This is where we really get to grind down on what our audience is. So let's say stay-at-home mom, either new parents, 3 to 5 years, or 1 to 2 years. Now, this is going to show your ad to new parents of this age group or this group or this group. If you want them to be a part of any of these groups and have something else, you're going to narrow it. So they are going to fit into one of these three, and they also have to be a part of one of these. Let's say that they are married or in a relationship. Now, you want to keep an eye out for this because 16 million people for a budget of $50 a day is way too much. So if that's the case and it's still that high and you don't want to add anything else here, you're going to have to turn that off. And it's going to bring you down to 1 million, which is a little high but not too bad. Now you can also do things such as saying you want them to be in the top 25% of income. Now, Facebook isn't necessarily super accurate with these, so I tend to avoid these. But if you know that you don't want to target anyone outside of that, then you can go ahead and add it. Another good thing to add is usually behaviors. You can target engaged shoppers, so people who have clicked the shop now call to action button in the past week. And as you can see, we're still pretty high up here with the audience. And then you can also exclude people from seeing your ad. So if you want to exclude people who like discount stores because you're selling expensive retail fashion items, you can do that. But generally that's going to bring it down a little bit too much. So if this is the only exclusion, you can change that out for narrowing further and just including people who love, for example, online shopping or high-end fashion. And as you can see, that really didn't change it much, so I'm just going to go ahead and take that away. And then once you're done with this, if you feel like you really like this audience and you think it's going to work, generally you can test it against a different audience using a different ad set, but I would usually recommend at least saving your audience. We're going to call this audience test 1 so that we know that to test it later. Once everything looks good, you can then move on to the creative. And this is where you can choose image, video, carousel, collection. It's really up to you. I'm actually not going to go ahead and create an ad for this, but generally, you're going to want to put a picture of the product. You're going to want to add a headline that's short, 3 to 5 words. Sometimes, especially if it's a carousel, added, let's say your shirts are, 10% of proceeds go to supporting small businesses, and you want to focus on that social aspect. Then generally adding small amounts of information is a good idea, and then you're going to want to add 2 more images to your carousel. Now I usually take this part off for carousel ads. Sometimes I take this off as well. And then if you have a physical address, I would definitely add this. And then when you come to the call to action, I would generally, if you're e-commerce, use Shop Now. Shop Now is the highest performing call to action. Learn More is the second highest. Download if you have a lead magnet. Contact us if you want to get leads. And Get Offer is usually a good go-to. So yeah, other than that, that's pretty much how you set up a cost-effective Facebook ad strategy. If you are looking to find a source for reliable digital marketing tips for Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO, ranking higher in search, how to use social media for your business, go ahead and subscribe to our blog at dmdigital.org/blog. And once again, if you ever need help with your digital marketing, advertising, social media, website stuff, feel free to reach out to us at dmdigital.org and sign up for a free marketing consultation. Also, if you feel pretty confident in your ability to make effective Facebook ads, you can make it easier by downloading our free Facebook ad sales funnel template at dmdigital.org/sales-funnel. You can go ahead and download that today, and it will help you automate your sales, reduce your costs, and streamline your marketing channels. Thank you for joining us for this video. If you have any other topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to send us a message or contact us at dmdigital.org.